What are you doing?
Directing.
This director's chair.
Welcome to Haugen Racing, guys. So today, we're gonna talk about how to build a drift car. We talk about it all the time. There's little snippets and all sorts of how to drift videos, and we've actually done this video before, but it was with the R32. We got a lot of comments saying, you know, this is kind of outrageous. Now that we truly have a proper starter drift car, we're gonna show you guys how to build a drift car, what's important, what's necessary, and what's unnecessary. Starting with safety and comfort. It's not the most important one, but it is up there. Let's get into it. First things first, cage or roll bar absolutely needs something for multiple reasons. First of all, is in the event of a crash or a rollover. At the very least, I recommend a 4-point cage. Delete the door bars in this A-pillar, it would be what we have back here. And so you have a main hoop that goes kind of over your head in a way, it's actually right behind your head. And then you have 2 down bars going back, and as well as a crossbar. That's at the very least what I would recommend. Bolt-in is okay. For tandem, they are gonna require that you have door bars, but even just getting started, guys, just get a budget, like used bolt-in 4-point cage. It is so worth it. You don't wanna flip over and smash your skull in. Trust me. It doesn't need to be quite as crazy as this. This is probably the only time I'm gonna say it on this car. This is the only part where we actually, you know, didn't do what we may not preach, because we are able to build a cage in-house, and we care about my safety and the passengers in it. The other thing it does for you is you're gonna wanna run harnesses, which we'll get to in a second, and you need a place to mount those. And mounting them just like through the seat and down to the floor is a massive no-no. So it gives you a mounting point. You can mount it right to this bar right here, or at least drape them over that and then down to the floor way back, which is another okay way to do it. Okay, so this section is comfort and safety. Seats, they do both. A stock seat is built for a passenger car, right? Getting in a crash, having airbags, having a seat belt that moves and allows the airbags to really take the impact. We're racing now though. You should be getting rid of your airbags and not having that stuff and moving to some sort of bucket seat. Generally, if it's a quality seat, FIA is not necessary. They have to charge extra for the certification. So if you're just getting into it, you know, that's totally fine to get like a used in good condition bucket seat. If you have drift at all and you don't have a bucket seat, I guarantee you that you're like gripping onto the steering wheel like crazy, trying to hold yourself in position because you're sliding all around. So that's kind of why a seat is like, honestly, top 3 upgrades for a drift car. It seems weird, but a bucket seat is just massive. Which brings us to steering wheel. Kind of depends on what you have, all right? When I had my Genesis Coupe, that steering wheel was like huge and bulky, and I would hit my fingers on stuff, and so it's a very worthwhile upgrade. But again, it depends on the car you have.
But don't get an eBay steering wheel.
Quick release is really just for ease of use. It's not necessary, we don't run them in all the cars, but it does, once you have like a roll cage and bucket seat and all that stuff, it does make it a lot easier to get in and out of the car. And then, belts. Long story short, we took the belt out of this car to use it in another car. 4-point seat belts, guys, there's no reason for them. I just do not think they should exist. I'm so against them. The extra point, that 5th or even the 2 points between your legs, it's called your anti-submarine belt. It's that for a reason. Okay, so before we move on to airbags and some type of extinguisher or suppression, I wanted to address 2 more things. Shifter and handbrake. Depending on what you have, you're probably gonna be okay. This is personal preference, but I'm a believer that the less you have to move your hand off the steering wheel to get to these controls, the better. Here, shifting, here, handbrake. So airbags, get rid of them. If it's your daily / drift car, which I do not recommend, that's kind of up to you. I would say when you're on the track, take out the fuse so they're not active and they're not gonna blow up on you. And all in all, guys, I really would not recommend trying to share duties with a daily in a drift car. It's just
as soon as you put that fuse back in, if there's any damage,
yeah. Pop! Let's finish up safety and comfort with fire. At the very least, get a 2-pound. I believe this is a 3-pound fire extinguisher, and it needs to be easily releasable and within reach. I should practice that a little bit. Weight. This is a big one. I'm not saying weight, but do weight, stick around. Weight is like, it's the best, okay? Because it affects everything. You lose weight, the car is suddenly faster, it brakes better, it's more nimble, on and on and on. And you're carrying around unnecessary stuff that could also potentially be dangerous to other cars or yourself. First, let's start with the outside. This car is obviously very de-weighted, and that's for a reason. I mean, even the freaking headlights. This is a little outrageous. You do not need to go to this extent, but look at the up front up here, all right? Especially considering newer cars where you have a lot of, like a bigger crash bar, you have all that padding, there's those foam, all that different crap behind your bumper. Get rid of all that for two reasons. One, you're saving weight. Two, complication. Like if you bump a cone and you have all these little doohickeys that they have on newer cars, it's gonna be such a pain in the ass trying to get everything to line right back up. You're gonna have to start zip tying stuff. Just get it down to where it's a bare bumper. We're drifting now, it's a drift car. You don't need all that extra crap, and it's just extra weight hanging off the front end. As far as bash bar goes, you need something. A stock crash bar is okay. It's absolutely better than nothing, but they're meant to crumple in a crash. They're not really meant for bumps. And so bash bar is a great upgrade. This one is pretty outrageous, but it's the one that was on it when we got it. But there's a lot of bash bars out there and they're not that expensive. But I wouldn't worry about right off the bat doing that. Just make sure you at least have the stock crash bar. As far as engine bay goes, depending on how new or old your car is, newer cars are gonna have so much extra crap, and anything that you don't need to actually drift the car, get rid of it. A big one is AC. Now we're kind of getting into like power and reliability, but I would get rid of that crap. Especially if you're doing any kind of engine swap or it's already been engine swapped, it's already probably gone, but if the compressor's still there, dump it. A lot of this stuff you do need. You need brake booster, you need all that stuff, so you can't get rid of it, but I'm really talking about like stock air box, that's weight and power. As far as body goes, this one is kind of where it's like, how much money do you want to spend? On this car, I really wanted to keep it simple and repairable, so we stuck with like the stock steel, but obviously we got rid of like any fender liners, anything like that. That stuff's just gonna get in the way, especially when you lower the car and put an angle kit on it. I would recommend just keeping it simple here. Fiberglass fenders are great though, and you can lose a little bit of weight, but get rid of all the junk underneath it. Doors is an easy one though, and it's free. Doors have so much weight in them, between the speakers, like the outer cap and all the padding behind it. I would get rid of all that. So this is pretty much what we do on all the cars. We completely gut them and then we trim out all this inner steel, and you would be amazed like how much weight savings you can get there. One thing to think about is that's why we talked about potentially going to a 6-point cage. If you get rid of all that, you are getting rid of a little bit of the stuff that's gonna protect you. But once you have a cage with a door bar, these are basically meaningless. Rear end is similar to the front. Depending on how new your car is, you might have a bunch of crap back here under the rear bumper. Get rid of it all, but again, make sure you have at least the stock crash bar, but I would recommend a bash bar. Which kind of brings us into the trunk. On a factory car, you're gonna have a spare tire in here, maybe a jack, you're gonna have some tools, you're gonna have all the interior padding. We kind of like just completely gutting these cars, and again, that's kind of why we talk about if you're gonna have a drift car, maybe not make it your daily. Wheels, and this is where you have to either kind of choose, do you want to go a little bit more style, hot boy, or really stick with the performance. Reps can be okay, but just know that they are a little bit more unsafe. In the event of a crash or hitting, like dirt dropping and hitting a curb, they tend to explode rather than bending. Personally, I would invest in wheels. And the nice thing is, if it's a budget drift car, it's gonna be low power, you're not gonna need that many. You're gonna need maybe 4 and 1 extra pair of rears, so 6 wheels. Next, let's talk engine and reliability. Depending on what car you chose, what chassis you chose, you may be stuck with what you have, okay? At minimum, I would say 200 horsepower. I feel like 200 to 300 horsepower is a sweet point for a starter drift car. In the United States, a lot of our viewers in the United States, and the cars, or the tracks here, are faster and longer than what you have in Japan. So, you're gonna be traveling faster, you need a little bit more power. This car is great, it has just a stock SR20. We've done some upgrades to help with cooling, and just give it a little bit more power. Something like a 350Z with stock V6, you're gonna be great. Anything that has a V8 in it, you're gonna be great. Anything that has inline 6, even if it's NA, you're gonna be fine. But moving on from that to like more reliability and even a little bit of safety, one of the biggest things is get rid of your coolant. Coolant on a lot of tracks is not allowed. I know that drifting, they're a little bit more lax with it. It's a big no-no in racing. So switch to distilled water and water wetter. The other thing that's gonna do is it's gonna run cooler. Coolant is slick when it gets on the track. It can get on people's tires and spin them out, and it's super dangerous. These things like radiator, intercooler, oil cooler, power steering, because we wanna keep it simple and budget, I would go and try it as you have it and watch your temps. For this car, it actually came with a coil radiator. Intercooler, we actually did, this is something where because we're in Arizona, it's so freaking hot, we felt like it was necessary to get something with a lot of surface area. And the other thing is, if you get an intercooler, especially something that's like a mid-mount, you can get it kind of up out of the way of danger. Colder intake, man, that's just like a freebie. A lot of people are like, oh, they don't really add any power, but they've been proven that they do add a little bit of power and they sound cool, and it's just like so cheap. So I would put a colder intake on it, but that's pretty much it. Again, keep it simple in here. You don't need freaking 400 or 500 horsepower to drift, okay? You absolutely don't. The exhaust, anything like mufflers or catalytic converters, those are just robbing you of power, and
it doesn't sound as cool.
All right, let's talk tires. I'm still a big supporter of getting something nice up front, something sticky. They're gonna last you a long time, especially on a low power car. The rear though, keep with something cheap and just slick. I like doing something that's a performance tire, just so it's not gonna blow up on you. As well as stock tires, if you can get enough grip out of them, then in the rear, that's totally fine. So here, it's just about saving money. As long as you have good stickies up front, you're gonna have good braking power and good grip on the front, and you'll be more than solid. Next up, we have suspension, which is like, also includes angle kit. But first, coilovers. I would say this is one of the #1 upgrades for a drift car when you're first getting started. If you spend a little bit more, you are gonna get a nicer product. Just don't get something like total eBay crap. You don't need to go crazy, you know, 2-way or 3-way coilovers, but just something that is of quality. So like fuel suspension, part shop max, anything in that kind of range is gonna be great. Also allows you to adjust your height. Get rid of your wheel gap is basically what you're going for, and it will be a little bit more planted. Angle kit, keep it simple. Extended lower control arm, modified knuckle, bam, done. A lot of people will say maybe get started with like no angle kit and kind of learn. I personally disagree with that. I think it's good to have a little extra angle, but you're gonna wanna get it eventually. So I always say, invest in the angle kit and kind of learn with it. As far as brakes in the front, we haven't really done anything here because it brakes just fine. So this is one where I would say, go see how it feels. If you feel like, man, I just don't have enough stopping power, then a great upgrade is pads and rotors. You don't need to go with like a big brake kit. That is just so unnecessary when you're getting started, and even at an intermediate level. So moving on to the rear, we already touched on coilovers. Yes, get front and rear coilovers. They come in a set. Same thing with brakes though. Go on the feel. Handbrake, stock handbrakes are generally gonna work more than fine. Drivetrain, we've already talked about the motor. We've already addressed that. So what is next? Your clutch. Clutch is such a worthwhile upgrade, especially on a lower horsepower car. It's gonna have a really soft, crappy feel, and clutch kicks aren't gonna work as well as they could. Me personally, if you can get good clutch kicks out of it, then you're probably fine. If you feel like it's just so soft and you don't have a good feel, then upgrade your clutch. It's usually not that bad. Advanced Clutch has a lot of kits out there, and they're not that expensive, and they'll last you a long time, especially in a lower horsepower car. Transmission, manual. LSDs will work, but this is another feel thing. So if you go out there and you feel like it's just kind of drifting weird and the wheels aren't locking up, then the LSD is probably failing you or it's not aggressive enough. So one thing you can always do is get an open diff and weld it. Welded diffs are more than solid, but you just really want to make sure that this thing is locking well. There's not any real upgrades you need to do. Axles, because we're budget, we're probably not gonna have a buttload of power, and we're not really all that worried about it. So now we're done with drivetrain. It's time to go to the most important part ever, style. Did I do it good that time, Aaron? All right, last but certainly not least, style. One of the coolest parts about drifting is the style. We don't have to all run the exact same spec car. We get to run cool body kits. We get to choose whatever chassis we want. So use this as a way to express yourself, show off kind of who you are. So for me, style is really about coming up with an initial theme. So picking kind of what colors you're gonna go with. And then before you start going crazy on buying parts, start picking parts that go with that theme and those colors. And that's kind of gonna give you the best chance of coming out with something that looks good and you enjoy. Just use it as a way to express yourself. Go crazy with it. Don't sticker up your entire windshield. It sucks. I'm not gonna tell you guys how to do it, but I just say have fun with it, go wild, and just use it as a way to kind of show off yourself, show off the car. Guys, that is how to build a drift car in a nutshell. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. But one last quick tip, do not get stuck in the build phase. Get out and drive. That is the most important mod, and it's the best thing you can do is get more seat time, more practice. You're gonna learn what you like and what you don't like. If we can do it, you guys can do it. You can go check out our build series to see how we did it. Otherwise, I appreciate you watching. Also, check out haugenracing.com for all our cool merch, and that helps support the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in a couple days. Peace.